Good morning, everyone. My name is Lynn Kenyon. I am Assistant Director of Grants and Special Programs here at the Coordinating Board, and I'd like to welcome you to our facility here at the Coordinating Board, and welcome to our online listeners. I have several different things that I would like to bring up before we actually get started with the presentations. First of all, name tags. You were given a name tag when you came in. Really important that when you go to the restroom or when you leave at lunch that you make sure and have that on when you come back in. It's a security issue, so just make sure that you have that with you. Bathrooms. To get to the bathrooms, if you'll go out the way you came in, back to the main hallway, turn right. In the middle of the hallway, on your left-hand side, are going to be the women's and the men's restroom. Men's on the right, women's on the left. Feel free if you need to get up and go at any time to please do that. Or we also have refreshments at the back of the room. We have coffee and we have some water, and Jane, I believe, brought cookies as she usually does. So at least for those here, online viewers, sorry you don't get some of Jane's cookies. We will take a lunch break. Looks like it's scheduled around 11:30, may be a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later. We'll give you about an hour and 15 minutes or so to go to lunch. There will be a listing of restaurants that are available in this area. As you go back out, it'll be on the table where you picked up your name tag. The closest one that a lot of our participants use is the Luby's, which is just right there, and you can get a variety of different things. So just as a suggestion. Breaks, we'll kind of play it by ear to take an official break. We'll just see how that goes. There is a break room in our facilities. When you go back out, instead of going right to the restrooms, if you turn left, and before you go through the glass doors, if you turn right, you can go in there, and you can even eat lunch in there. There are a few items that are available. You can't use cash. It has to be a credit card. You could use your debit card as a credit card, and there's a machine in there that you would scan the items, and it's, on your own, whatever the word is, you're on your own honesty to be able to purchase those items. Microphones. Very important that if you ask a question, and we very much encourage questions during the workshops, there's a microphone on each of the tables. We can hear each other if we didn't use a microphone very easily, because this is, a pretty small group. But if you ask a question, we would ask that you use the microphone so our online listeners can take advantage and listen to what your question is. And when we answer, we will also be using a microphone so that they can hear that. We're also taping this or recording it for viewing at a later time. If there are some participants that weren't able to actually be with us today, but they want to listen to this later, we are going to make it available out on our website for them to listen to. So it will really help if you use the microphone to make sure that we get your question and the answer included in on the recording. PowerPoints and handouts were made available on Friday to let you. I sent out an email to the distribution list to let you know that they were available on the Grants and Special website, which is listed right over here on the screen. It's the first link for our online viewers. If you haven't already gone out and made copies of the PowerPoints or the handouts, you can go to the GSP website under the workshops section of the GSP website and make copies of anything that you want to make copies of that are out there. Questions and comments from our online viewers, please feel free to send us your questions or comments to the address that's the bottom link or address on the screen that's showing right now. It's fameeting@thec.state.tx.us. And if you will send your question, I'm going to be manning that email address, and I'll make sure that the presenter gets that question and gets your question answered. Evaluations. If you didn't print one of the evaluations when you came today, or for our online viewers, those evaluations are kind of the second page of the agenda. If you didn't have an evaluation with you to bring today, we will have some extra ones out on the table that you can pick up and complete. We really do look at those evaluations. In fact, we've had 3 workshops This is our third workshop, and we received comments from the first workshop that we implemented and made sure that we listened to and made the necessary changes to make sure that we reflected that feedback that we got for the second and for this one. Streaming, I know that we have some issues sometimes with the streaming of the online workshop or the webcast. I've been told that it's usually if there's a streaming issue when our voices or when our mouths are going but our voice is delayed, that it's probably the result of the receiving end. I don't know. That's what I've been told. So I know it's frustrating, and if we have an online viewer that's having issues with that, you can email me. I'll be glad to check on it to see if there's anything that we can do on our end. But unfortunately, it may just be something that we have to deal with. Anything else? Any questions that y'all have before we get started? Anything I forgot to bring up? Okay, well, we will get started. The first presentation is going to be from Jane Caldwell on program allocations and negotiated rulemaking.
Good morning. Don't want to blast you out, sorry about that. Negotiated rulemaking has been an interesting process for us at the coordinating board. When the legislature met last session, the coordinating board was going through sunset. If you are unfamiliar with that, every 12 years or so, every state agency goes through a sunset review by the Sunset Commission. And, oh, thank you. That would probably help. And the results is a bill that is submitted to the legislature with recommendations for changes for the agency and hopefully a recommendation that the agency continue to exist. If they actually have the authority to say there is no need for this agency and therefore we recommend that it be discontinued. Thankfully, that was not their conclusion about the coordinating board. But one of the things that they came up with in that sunset bill, and this is Senate Bill 215, if you want some really fascinating reading sometime, is that the coordinating board make the allocation process more public and get input from institutions and stakeholders as to how those calculations should be done. I think one of the things that no one anticipated is that this requirement was passed for all trusteed funds to the coordinating board, and there's something like 50 different trusteed funds to the board that we're now having to go through sunset review for. I mean, not sunset, but the negotiated rulemaking. In our area, what's relevant to you most particularly are TEG and the work study program, and those are the two I want to talk about. But let me talk to you a little bit about the process. Again, like I said, the intent was to get stakeholder input into this process as to how the money should be distributed. And so the first step was to send memos out to all institutions and ICUT and organizations related to higher education and get them to nominate people to be on the negotiated rulemaking committee. That list of people then was posted in the Texas Register for comment. So people could say, oh my gosh, that person shouldn't do this, they don't have that broad a perspective, or I'd like to recommend another person to join that committee. So it was another round of public input to the process. Once that was done, the final list was determined, and a facilitator who is not a financial aid officer, but is someone who would be a unbiased leader in the process. This is not a subject matter person. It's not someone who will help answer the questions, but someone who helps to keep the process going and people working according to rules. And then the committee itself has the right to come up with the rules. In fact, the purpose of those committees is to come up with a set of rules that will be added to the TEG rules or the work study rules that tells how the allocations will be done. And that's the main content of what that committee is dealing with. One of the interesting things is that the committee gets to decide what is consensus. In other words, before they can get a final decision, before they even start their discussions, they agree on what consensus is, which could be 100% or 75%. In the case of both work study and TEG, they were 100% agreement. And the group then comes up with a draft of the rules. It is posted in the register. Again, we have comments, a 30-day comment period. Those comments are addressed, and the final product goes to our board for adoption. Nothing to it. It takes about a couple of months to get all of this process done, but at the end you end up with something that more people have been involved in and hopefully better understand the process. Okay. For the the TEG program, the main change that occurred in the discussions, or that came out of the discussions, was, as you all know, our allocations in TEG for years have been based on your TEG needs survey, whose intent is to identify the amount of TEG each school could use if the program were fully funded. Okay, the main difference between what we have been doing in the past and what is going forward and was used for the 2015 allocations is a decision to use not just the prior year needs survey, but the results of the prior 3 years. So you have a mollifying or softening effect of any ups and downs of a given institution. It'll be a 3-year period as you move forward. So it's not a single year that's impacting it, but the prior 3 years. So that's the main change that was made by the committee. So we already have this data. It's not something additional that you're going to have to submit to us. So we'll use, for 2015, we use the surveys for fall 13, fall 12, and fall 11. And then in the next year, we'll drop off 11 and add the next fall. So it's a very smooth transition, no major changes. The other thing that occurred in the discussion is the decision to go to, as you know, you have 2 award limits. One is your basic award, and then you have the exceptional need award that is 150% of that basic amount, and both of those amounts are being used in the allocation determination. Now we've already always had both parts, but in the past the exceptional need was used at 50%. Now all 100% of the exceptional need is included in that formula. So that's what came out of the committee and was in effect for the 2015 and will continue in the future. Now, if a decision is made that the allocation process needs to be changed again, this whole process would need to be done again. A committee pulled together, posted, and go through the facilitator, selection of a facilitator, the meeting, and the decisions as to what to do. It is intended to be a very deliberate participatory process, and that's the way it ought to be. Okay, any questions about the process? Okay, we have been fascinated in learning how to make this happen. We had not used this process in the past, and so we've been on a learning curve. We've only had one committee so far that has had trouble reaching agreement, and we'll meet again with them shortly. Okay, for the work study program, again, not huge changes in how this would be done, but primarily in the use of a 9-month EFC cap. In this case, the data is coming from the Financial Aid Database report. And we're talking about people who are basically eligible for the work study program, are Texas residents enrolled at least half-time, et cetera, et cetera. The addition of an EFC cap was made, and that EFC cap is a 9-month EFC cap for the amount of tuition and fees that would be paid, or I just lost my train of thought. Average in-district 9-month cost of attendance at a two-year college. So for 2015, it was around 14,500 as the EFC cut. So it's really moving well into the middle-income students and so forth, not having a huge impact on the number of people that individual institutions would have. One of the items, though, that we have run into is the fact that the EFC cap and using a 9-month number is a little bit difficult for us because in the FADS report, you're reporting an EFC for each student, but it's for the period of time for which they receive financial aid. So it may be a 1-semester EFC, or it could be 2 semesters, or it could include summer. So one of the changes is coming out of these negotiated rules is there'll be a new field in the FADS report starting this fall. You should have gotten a notice about this, but you'll need to also report the 9-month EFC, as well as the one relevant for the period of getting financial aid. That way we have comparable data for all of the students who are included in these allocations. That makes sense? Okay, God bless you. Okay, so the bottom line is that the rules and the formulas, the rules will include the formulas of how this is going to be done. They will not be changed except going back through the committee type process. The rules include both the formulas and the sources of the data, so it's very clear as to how this is being done. In our rules in the past, we've indicated that the coordinating board would indicate each year what the deadline was for using your money. Now in the rules, it is specifically February 20th or the first working day thereafter. So that will be a constant in the future, not something we set each year. And then the other kind of unique thing that we did that the committees have chosen to do is that in the past, we've done the allocation and sent out the announcement, and that was it. Now we send it out and give you 10 days to take a look at the data and confirm that we have correctly interpreted the information you sent to us. You're not changing the formulas or anything like that, but you are confirming that we used your data correctly that you have submitted to us. So that's a good, for us, it's a wonderful safety net because we're not going out with final numbers only to find out there might have been an error. This way we get your feedback before the final numbers are sent out. All right? Any questions about any of this? Does it make sense? Okay. Boy, that was too quick. No questions? All right. If you, I will be here during the rest of the day. If you have any questions, feel free to come and ask me. Anyone online, if you have a question about the process or the results, please feel free to give us an email. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Last slide. To let you, we had, as I mentioned before, we had 4 programs that we did these negotiations for. TEG and work study are the ones relevant to this audience. Texas Grants and TEOG took a bit more time and therefore were not completed in time to use this new formula for 2015. So the Texas grant allocations for 2015 were done using the old formula, but in 2016 they have a new formula set up that will be used. TEOG is the program that is still in negotiation. So obviously we didn't have a new formula for the 2015 calculations. We used the old ones. And then for 2016 is when we hope to have a new formula for TEOG. Okay, sorry about that. Can I mention here that I got back from vacation yesterday? I think I'm mentally somewhere between here and Colorado, and I apologize. I hope this was useful information. Take care.
While we're waiting for Raphael to switch things over and to come up and present, I just want to remind our online viewers that if you have a question, if you will send it to fameeting@thecb.state.tx.us, we'll be happy to share that question and get you an answer.
All right. A little higher there. Good morning, everybody. How are y'all doing today? I'm going to fix that. Awesome. All right, everybody. My name is Rafael Villarreal. I am the gentleman that's responsible for handling the TEG program here at the coordinating board. Please remember that if you have any questions at any point in time during my presentation, by all means, please feel free to ask. You've got the microphones there on the tables that you can share, and we'll have at it, all right? Excellent. Today, as you can see here, we're going to talk about a few things, award requirements, something new that's going to be implemented here as soon as we can get all of the end-of-year reports certified. It's the student award history request process. We'll talk about student for award PJs, professional judgments, hardships, talk about the usual award amounts, tuition differential, allocations, the funds request process, the reports that y'all have to complete with this program, some additional information, and then we'll have a little question and answer session at the end of my PowerPoint. Of course, the initial year requirements are what they've been for a while. You have to be a Texas resident or a National Merit Scholarship finalist, getting at least $1,000 in scholarships. The student has to be paying more tuition than they would at a comparable Texas university, public college. They have to be paying the same amount as all the other students in tuition. They cannot receive an athletic scholarship at the same exact time, same semester in which they receive a TEG award. The student does have to demonstrate financial need. They have to be registered for selective service, and they do have to be enrolled at least 3/4 time in a first degree program that they are pursuing. They cannot receive ordination as a result of the degree they get and get TEG at the same time. Now, at the end of an initial award year, the student has to meet all of these IY requirements as well as the institutional SAP requirements to qualify for their first renewal award. Okay? Something I'd like to point out that is no matter how long the student is in school pursuing an associate's and then a bachelor's, then a master's, then a doctoral, then a professional degree, the way this program is written, the student, no matter whenever they get it, they only get one initial year award. It's not as though they get an IY award for their undergraduate degree. They pursue their master's degree. Their first degree under that program their first award is another initial award. It's not considered that. It's considered another renewal award, still having to meet the same program requirements that we're about to see here in a second. And here they are. Again, they have to continue meeting the initial year requirements, and they also have to start meeting the program requirements to get their second renewal award thereafter. Program requirements are a minimum 75% completion rate, minimum 2.5 cumulative GPA, and having completed 24 semester credit hours if pursuing an undergraduate degree, a minimum of 18 semester credit hours if they're in a graduate program. Now, undergraduates, under program rules, they do have a certain time period within which they can receive awards. If undergraduate is pursuing a degree that's a degree plan of 4 years or less, they have a maximum of 5 years. If the undergraduate is pursuing a degree of more than 4 years, they have a maximum of 6 years to get an award, and that's consecutive from when they first get their IY award till 5 or 6 years from that semester forward. That's how we count it. Graduate students, however, do not have a time frame within which they can participate and be eligible. They're unlimited. Now, here's the new one. It's, I said, we're going to be implementing this program after we get all of the end-of-year reports certified. What you're going to start being able to do is, for any type of students coming into your school, be it incoming students that you believe are brand new, or any transfer types of students, a lot of times you've been having to contact me or take a look at their reports that the student provides, contact the student, question the student, hey, did you get TEG? Did you not get it? What was your final, SAP stats, all that kind of stuff like that. What we'll be implementing, though, is a system within which you can submit to us a request file with as many students as you want to put in there. It can be a select number of few. We're only going to check transfer students. You want to select everybody who's enrolled at your school that semester. It's unlimited. You set the number of students you want to put in the file. You submit it to us, and if there is any type of TEG award history, it will be provided back to you. It's a comprehensive listing that we're going to provide back to you, and we can see right here. Again, like I said, you give us the data that you want. You're going to provide to us the student's ID number, which should be their social if they have it, their date of birth, their first, and their last name. All right? And again, if we do have any type of end-of-year history on that student that you put in that list, we will provide it to you. The funny ones are going to be the students that do not have a social, that have a school-issued ID. They may take a little bit more of investigation because, of course, the number that you've assigned to them will be different from the number that another institution would assign to them. They may be the ones that kind of slip through the cracks. We'll discuss that a little bit later. Again, it's a comprehensive view of the student's award history that is provided to you. One thing I do want to stress, though, is that the information that we give to you should not be the conclusion of your determination. Yes, they're eligible. No, they're not eligible. The information that we give to you in some circumstances could be erroneous. I've been correcting some schools where, an undergraduate student last year ended FY13, 100% completion rate, has a 3.9 GPA. They completed 35 hours. But on the end of year report, the school put, no, they didn't meet SAP. That was erroneous. So again, we give you information that's given to us, we provide it to you, but it's only for your information, for your, I guess, your knowledge to make the final decision. Yes, they're eligible. No, they're not. Okay? Any questions or anything? All righty. Here, I'll give you an idea. I'm going to show you a little example of what a sample result file will look like, but I'll give you the description first. First, you can see, of course, the students identifying information, their ID, their date of birth, their first name and their last name as provided to us and is present in the end-of-year database. And again, we give this back to you to make sure, oh yeah, it's the right person. Just some more visual confirmation. Then what we'll give you is a field called IY, which is the initial year the student was awarded, the fiscal year. It's going to say 2009, 2010, whatever it may be. It's a fiscal year. And then a number identifying for which semester the student was given an IY award, fall or spring. Okay? And again, undergraduates, 4-year degree program or less, they have 5 years or 10 semesters. If their IY awards in the spring, they have until the fall semester to continue to get an award of that 5th year. And then this is where we give you the SAP information that was reported to us. The last year it was reported to us they got an award, what school, the FICE code that they got that award, whether or not they met SAP at the end of that fiscal year, what was their GPA at the end of that last award year, how many hours did they complete at the end of that last award year. Again, what was their completion rate of the hours attempted at that last award year? And then most importantly, what degree were they pursuing when they got their last award? Okay? Now here we see a sample results file. It's kind of small, I understand. Apologize for those looking online. It's a little bit difficult to see, but all those fields that I just went over, they're all described right here. So you can take a look at all of that, and that just gives you, again, that just providing you with the information that you need, can assist you to make your decision, is the student eligible for another award? You can look at that information right there and base your decision off that. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you have a microphone?
Turn it on at the top and the bottom.
I think you switch at the bottom, turn it on at the top.
The little one, just there's a button on it. Button on the side.
There's a button on the side or something like that?
That work?
Yep.
Perfect.
I'm a little confused what the benefit is if you're saying we really can't trust this, if it's just assisting. My fear is we use this and it comes back and, oh, well, it's not definitive.
Well, well, that's a good question. That's a good point. But again, if we are providing the information to you and it is current, it's the most current information we have, it's the most current information you can get. Now, if like I said before, if a student shows 100% completion rate, 3.9 GPA, 24 hours completed, and it says no, you still have the right to contact that school and say, was that a correct statement on your part? Was it erroneous? And you verify information. Of course, you have the power to make the final decision. If you find information that contradicts what we have, by all means, share it with me. But as long as you can substantiate and confirm this was our decision based on this information, you have your substantiation, you have your background. Yes.
Okay. Could you explain the mechanism by which all this information is going back and forth between us?
Correct. What we're going to do is you're going to be submitting a file. I can't remember the format of the file, but like you submit your end-of-year reports, like you submit your FADV report, it's going to be over the SFTP process. It's going to be just a small little file. It's going to have student ID number, date of birth, first name, last name. You send it to us, and I believe we've already got the award history manual created. It's just I cannot provide it. Can't start using it until, again, all the end-of-year reports are certified to make sure we have the most recent, the most current data. But it's a simple matter of just here's the name of the file, here's the 4 fields in the file in the proper format. You submit it via SFTP. You get a results file back the same way you get your error reports back, your certification report back, all that kind of stuff like that. It's going to be submitted in the same manner that you're used to submitting it now, other reports and requests.
Okay, I have another question.
Sure.
Our administrators who deal with Beyond Time and Cal can get onto a website now, at least, and do administration. Is this but a step toward a website basis of doing things?
It's a little bit different, but that is a good point. I know at one point in time I think we were trying to provide something of nature, but this is what was given as a result, what our agency, our IT division stuff had come up with. But I will look into that. There may be something where you say it's, instead of having to go through this submission process, it's an online situation. I will look into that. I'll look into that for you.
Well, I can tell you right now, our financial aid counselors would like something that's a little more transparent than trying to figure out the FICE code. I mean, let's be honest. Do we all know the FICE codes of all the schools across Texas? I mean, I have to stop and remember ours sometimes. And then number 2 means spring and number 1 means fall. I mean, you know, just a little more English language friendly output, I think, at least would help. Okay. But I realize you're just simply working off the raw report data everyone sent you. Mm-hmm. But my whole argument being that I think the process needs to work quicker for people.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem. That's good points. Appreciate that. Anybody concur? Anybody have any other suggestions or ideas or anything like to state? Those are good points. Yes. Oh.
We usually start awarding in March for the upcoming school year. Which I'm sure a lot of private schools do. Mm-hmm. Is this probably not going to be ready each year until after the end of year report comes out?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is this going to be kind of a yearly thing that this matching won't be ready until the end of the year report is out each year?
If I'm not mistaken, I think once the system goes in after the India reports are certified this year, it's going to be a constant system that's available. It's just a matter of the information that's going to be in there may be a year old. So if when you go to award in March of next year, you're going to have the information showing how the student ended this fiscal year 14 and go forward from that one. Again, it's only going to be as accurate and up to date as what's provided to us. It may be that in one situation a student ended the spring semester only completing 20 hours, which means they don't meet program SAP. They reported as met SAP. No. Perhaps the student took summer hours, took 6 hours, and now met SAP. Until that school provides to us a summer update file and changes what's in the end of your system, what you're going to get is what we last got. And again, that's why I don't want schools to believe that the information I'm providing to you is the be-all, end-all of the student's eligibility. There could be, again, it's just a quick glance at it. Oh, okay, it says yes. I mean, in the situations where it says yes, the student met SAP, maybe you do want to go with it. And so, okay, boom, right there. But if it says no, you would still have to ensure, especially if the student came to you and is like, oh, no, I took summer courses, I completed it, here's my summer transcript. As long as you have the information to substantiate a decision to give the student an award, if you have that information, it's different from what I got, go with what you have. You are the final decision-making authority.
So, of course, if it said no, we wouldn't award them. If it said yes, say in March, April, May, before the final came out, are we safe to award them?
I'm going to let Jane answer that one, actually.
Now, the problem really is Sorry, I can't see you. Hi. The main problem, of course, is that we don't have any student information until you send it to us. And so for any given academic year, we have no information at all about that year until we get your end-of-year reports, which are the preliminary numbers, which should be accurate at that time. But as Raphael was indicating, if a student at that point hadn't taken enough hours and took summer hours, at that point we wouldn't know it. So yeah, if you're awarding in March, we don't have current year data that we can share.
For a transfer student. Now, of course, we know our own students.
Yeah.
But for a transfer student.
Right. And it may be that this doesn't work for you. It may be that the information is available too late to be of much use. But the other possibility is that when you do get the reports in the middle of summer, which is after we get your end-of-year reports finalized, then you could do it as a check to see if you get confirmation of what you've done. You have the full right to continue the process you've used all along. This is simply an effort to give you an easy way to get some additional information if you want it. But don't feel you have to use this. And you're quite right. It will not be available in March when you're programming, because that current year we have no information about whatsoever at that time.
Okay, one last comment on a web-based approach. In light of the existence of needing to update on the basis of summer schoolwork, a web-based approach that offers a quicker, more real-time, so to speak, communication back and forth, I think is especially valuable in that instance, because that summer activity can be the changing aspect of a eligibility issue.
You said you're requesting something, you're suggesting maybe something more of an online submission of summer update data as opposed to this file system where you submit a file and processing.
That is like ice cream with chocolate syrup. Good, yeah.
Rock and roll. All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yes, ma'am. Oh.
Does this work? It does. If you have to go to the institution that the student attended before he transferred to your institution in order to get confirmation, does the student have to do something formal to waive his FERPA rights in order for the two people to talk about him?
Ooh.
Good.
Yeah, I'm getting an indication that there's no need for the student to waive that right.
That's part of, FERPA allows you to share information with another entity that's interested in them for an educational purpose, and that's an educational purpose. We used to have financial aid transcripts that we would mail back and forth if anybody's old enough to remember those. Yeah.
Cool. Good question. Thank you. Anybody else? Anything? All right. Let's go on. Move on. All righty. Everybody knows about professional judgments, hardship decisions. They allow students to enroll and to receive awards that are enrolled less than half time or three-quarter time, or they're not meeting SAP. Of course, your hardship policy that you base your decisions on have to be available for public review. And of course, any hardship decisions have to be documented in that student's file to substantiate and document why we gave the award. You got to have that in there to make sure we can confirm why you gave it to them, should it ever be asked. All right, award amount. Of course, the maximum annual award is the least of the student's tuition differential, their financial need, or for this year and the upcoming year, a maximum of $3,250. Undergraduate students, only undergraduates, with an EFC of less than or equal to $1,000 are eligible to receive up to 150% of that maximum, which is a total of $4,875. Now, of course, if you're giving an award to a student and you having to, with a PJ decision, they're enrolled below minimum enrollment, you do have to prorate that award. And the method by doing that is utilizing this right here. Of course, if they're enrolled at least three-quarter time, student can get 100% of the maximum they're eligible. If they're enrolled half-time, you can only give them 50% of the maximum they're allowed, or that's allowed to them. If they're at least 1/4 time, they can get only 25% of their maximum award amount. Okay? Tuition differentials. Of course, it is the difference in tuition paid at a private institution and a comparable Texas public institution. We utilize the SACS levels of degrees to compare schools and find a comparable institution and base the tuition differentials on that. Here we see the listings of the 6 different SACS levels, and of course what they mean in terms of how many degrees they provide, what types of degrees they provide. Now, as Jane discussed earlier, allocations are now based on the average of need survey data from the past 3 years. So for FY15, again, it was your fall 2013, fall 2012, and fall 2011 need surveys, the averages of that data that was used to calculate your FY15 allocations. Again, schools now have 10 days. We provide the initial allocation amounts to the schools with the substantiating data that we use to make those decisions. We give you 10 days to review the data and the calculations and bring up any concerns or point out any errors you might find. Again, as with every year, the allocation amount we give to you, you have until February 20th to encumber and spend that money. Anything that you do not spend is reclaimed for the reallocation purposes given to other schools. Something, again, that you can also do for those participating in the work-study program, you can transfer the lesser amount of $10,000 or 10% or $20,000 between the two programs. So 10% of the program you're transferring from to the other one, or $20,000, whichever one is lesser. You're allowed to exchange that amount between the two programs. Any questions? Okay. The funds request process, of course, that changed this year. I'm sure you all are all aware of it. It's a little bit different. Instead of sending request forms to me, you now do make the requests online. The website you go to right there on the GSP website, there it is right there. You, of course, you request as often as you need to. You, of course, as before with anything else, anytime you get in a dispersal, you have to make sure you get the award monies in your bank. You have 5 working days to disperse those funds. Of course, we utilize that information on the funds request form to monitor your fund utilization for reports for the legislature, for ourselves, things and everything of that nature. So as a result, because we utilize that information, accuracy is important. You know, got to make sure you give me the correct number of students for whom you're requesting, new students for whom you're requesting monies, total number of students, total number of monies requested. It all comes in handy, especially when I'm doing some certain reports. Okay. And of course, here's a copy of the funds request form. Anybody familiar with that? That's the online form. Step-by-step process. First step you do, and of course all these fields do have to be completed, otherwise you will get a little error message at the end saying you forgot to do this, forgot to do that. All these cells do have to be filled out. Step 1, just all the requesting information. Your financial aid director, your reporting financial aid officer, and the business office contact people we can contact in case we have questions about the request. All those have to be filled out there. And then you move into your current request, step 2. How much money are you currently requesting? And the little funny one there is that second one is how many number of awards, new awards, are you requesting these monies for? You put in your first request of the year, you're requesting $1 million for 200 students. Okay? Your second request, perhaps you only give 2 requests a year. You're now requesting your other $1 million for 0 new students. You're giving that million to the same 200 students. You'd put 0 on that first one because you don't have any new awards you're giving out. Step 3 is where you put, here's how much money we were given for the year, your allocation amount. Bless you. How much money you've requested so far this year, including the request you're submitting. And then here, in that last field, is where you put your total number of students that you have given awards to, distinct student awards. So that's where you put the 200. This is where you sign and date it, so to speak. Step 5 is if you happen to submit a revision to your request that has not been processed yet. Hey, I made a request your first day, you sent it on July 21st. Well, July 22nd rolls around, I requested the wrong amount. You would fill out the information in step 5, give us I'm confirming that this is a revised request. Here's the date I'm submitting my submission, my revision submission, and then you just a quick detail why you're submitting a revision, why you're not requesting, what happened, what changed that you had to change your request. And then you hit submit, and it goes through. Of course, if you're not able to disperse the monies that you get within 5 business days, you got to refund those monies to us. You have to refund them unless you're able to find another eligible recipient. You get the money for student X, turns out they're not qualified. Oh, you got student Y that you can give the monies to. As long as you can give student Y those monies within 5 days, not a problem. You don't have to refund the monies. So again, but if you have if you need any more information on refunds, how to do it, wire transfers back to us, not checks, but we prefer direct deposits, wire transfers. All that information can also be found on the GSP website there at that website right there, listed right there. Reports. Here's some of the reports that I'm sure you're familiar. You have to submit. First one you submit, of course, is your needs survey. It's due by November 7th. Again, we use that information now in a 3-year average to calculate the upcoming year's allocation for your school. The big one, and one big one, the audit reports are due April 15th of the year following the fiscal year. So like you just had your FY13 audit report due by this past April 15th. Your year-end report that we're still working on at this point in time is due by July 15th. The big one, the FADB report, is due November 1st, following the end of the fiscal year that you're reporting. And again, what we mentioned before was the summer update files. There's no exact deadline to submit them. It's just as you receive updated information, anything of that nature, you submit the file to us and update the previous year's end of year record. Summer updates do not update any year except for the prior year. If you find out a student has FY11 end of year record that's incorrect, you would just simply need to notify me and we'll talk about it. But you can't submit a summer update file to update any other year other than the prior year. Sir?
You said November on the database. Is it
I'm sorry.
November or is it December?
December 1st. I apologize.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you go, boy. Wait a second. He gets a cookie. Somebody get him a cookie. Rock and roll. Sorry about that. December 1st is when the FADB report is due. Any questions, anything? All right. Additional information, of course, can be found on the GSP information website right there about specific TEG issues. You can subscribe to our GSP information distribution list. That's where we send out all the notifications about the allocations, new rules, new programs, implementation of this and that, things you need to know. It's a very good idea. You really should be subscribed to our distribution list right there. And of course, general TEG program information can be found at that website on the collegeforalltexans.com. Okay. All right, questions time. All right, people, who's been listening? Freshman student ended his IY award year on academic warning and was placed on an academic plan. He was given his renewal award the next year, ending that year with a 2.0 GPA, completing 100% of the 24 hours he attempted. He did successfully complete his academic plan. Can he be given a renewal award the next year? Anybody want to try? No? No? I'm getting a consensus of no. Alrighty. It's actually up to your discretion. Since he's not meeting program staff requirements, technically he is not eligible to receive an award. Perhaps he qualifies for a hardship decision based on your hardship policy. You have that right to make that decision. Okay? Perhaps he didn't have the proper GPA at the end of the year. Beginning of fall, you said nope, don't get one. The end of the fall semester, his GPA is now above 2.5. You have the right to give him a spring award. You have that ultimate decision, that decision-making authority. Now, again, regardless of how he regains eligibility, he does not have to be given a renewal award. He could have ended last year meeting SAP requirements, program SAP requirements. You have the ultimate decision as to whether or not to give that student an award. The TEG program is not an entitlement program. Just because they qualified doesn't mean they have to get an award. You have that right. So half of y'all were correct. Yeah, I see how it will be. Rock and roll. All right, next scenario. University A plans to give TEG monies to over 1,600 students. Of course, tuition rates are going to vary based on what degree plan the student is following. Instead of having to calculate tuition differential for each individual award recipient, can the school use a tuition differential rate, like on the program guidelines, that it's got a greater number of hours that already exists on that chart? Can the school use that instead of having to calculate all 1,600? Can they just use a basic system, something that's provided? The school have that option? These are not easy questions. Anybody? Yes.
No.
One at the top. Yes. Flat.
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that prompt response.
It was hard.
All right. The answer? The tuition differential for each student, it really should be calculated for each individual student based on the degree they're taking, the number of hours they're taking. However, as we just talked about, we gave you, every time we send out the tuition differential information, we give you a chart of 30, 24, and 18 hours for your school for the different classification levels. If one of those numbers suits what you can do for that student and it does not prohibit the student from getting a full award, you're more than welcome to use that number. But that's something you have to choose whether or not you want to use that or not. You could be in error and give the student too much. It's your call. I can only imagine how much work it would be to calculate tuition differential for every single student. That's a lot of work. You can use our information if it doesn't affect what they can get a maximum. It doesn't limit their maximum award amount. You can do that, but it's your call. Okay. Scenario 3. Student at College B is given scholarship money. College B is in the athletic division is giving scholarship monies to students that play intercollegiate sports and to students that work for the various sports programs, support staff. These monies come from the college itself, from alumni, come from all kinds of different sources, not just one. Can a student that receives these scholarship monies simultaneously receive a TEG award?
No.
Is that your final response?
No.
Oh. Now I'm confused. Okay, wait a minute.
I suppose it's up to the institution.
Survey says. Perhaps. Rock and roll. It all depends on whether or not the student is getting that scholarship. If the student has to play sports as a result of receiving the scholarship, okay? The source of the scholarship, the amount of the scholarship is irrelevant. If the student is given athletic scholarship monies to play a sport for the school, then that prohibits them from getting a TEG award in the same semester. But if it's some kind of support staff, somebody who, runs errands or does the field, lines the field, something like that, if they're not required to play sports and they get this money, then yes, you can give them a simultaneous TEG award. Okay? Any questions, anything? All right. Scenario 4. An undergraduate student with an EFC of $1,000 received an initial award this year and graduated at the end of the fall semester. She did enroll for 12 semester credit hours, and even though she was eligible to receive the full award amount, she was only given $3,000. Mother. Okay. On the fall census date, after being given her $3,000, she dropped to 8 semester credit hours. It's the institution's refund policy to adjust awards through the census date, which is when she dropped it, when she dropped from 12 to 8. What options does the institution have to resolve this situation? Anybody? No? Well, fine, I'm not going to show you the answer. Next scenario. Come on. Here's an option. The school can cancel the award. School can grant a professional judgment and prorate the award to $1,500, which is half of what she was given. They can prorate it to $16.25, which is half of the annual amount, so for one semester, that amount. Or they can just do half of the semester maximum that they want to do. They can do it for the year, half of the year. They can give her $1. Again, the institution makes the final decision. You have the flexibility to do what you choose to do with the award within rules. She doesn't have to get the award. Whatever you choose to do, as long as you substantiate it with a PJ decision, hardship decision, you do it that way. You have to substantiate it, but you have final decision-making authority. You got the power. All right. Last scenario. Yay. Okay. An undergraduate renewal award student graduates at the end of the year with a 2.24 cumulative GPA, completing 76% of the 21 hours that they attempted. Student enrolls at the same institution next year to pursue a master's degree in religious education. Okay. As long as that student enrolls for at least three-quarter time, can the student be considered eligible to receive an initial award as a graduate student? I see some head shaking. Not an IY award. Again, in the entire athletic and academic career of a student, they only get one initial award. Now, given the information I provided, the student did not end the prior year meeting program SAP requirements, okay? But if your school's hardship policy allows for a decision to be made appropriately, you can grant the student a hardship decision and give the student an award. Again, it's up to the school. But if the student is pursuing a master's degree that results in ordination, that is prohibited from program rule. Any degree leading to ordination cannot be, that student cannot receive TEG award monies pursuing that degree. That's the only thing. You have to make sure you check that. Grant them a hardship decision, yay, no problem. But not if the degree leads to ordination. Any questions? Sir.
You put your answer sheets so we couldn't cheat beforehand. Will you have those posted for kids?
Right after I get on that web application for you, sir, I'll get right on that. Yes. I will change the handouts available on the GSP website with the answers, yes. But you will be blocked.
Man, you're all about customer service. Yeah.
When I feel like it, yes, sir. Yeah. All right. Any additional questions? Anything I want to point out? Anything at all? Yes. Hello. Hello. That's the top button. There you go. Okay. Rock and roll.
Can you go back to your first scenario? I'm sorry.
Okay. I think I can get there eventually.
The initial award, the freshman who got their initial award, I think it was the first one.
That one?
Okay, can you go to the response to that one?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So based on that, though, he had received an initial award, so wouldn't he just need to meet institutional SAP period? Right. It's not...
Here, maybe I got that incorrect. No. He was given an Iowa award and ended it. Then he was given a renewal.
After the renewal year, okay. Thanks.
Thank you for joining our program. No, that's cool. Even I had to go, oh, crap. Wait a minute. Pardon my French?
I got it.
Yeah.
So this after a second year.
Yeah, it's after a second year, yeah. I said I made these questions more complicated than yes, no that I've done in the past. Yeah, I wanted to make sure these weren't yes, no questions. I was like, you know what, let's rock the boat. And I rocked myself, thank you. Anything else, anybody? All right, rock and roll. Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
I'm going to take a 10-minute break.
Oh, okay. We'll be taking a 10-minute break. Beverages provided in the back. Additives at your own course. All right.
We're moving a little bit faster than we expected to move today. I have had a request from one of the participants if we could go around the room and just introduce ourselves and what institution that you work with. She thought that would be helpful. I'll let her get started. And you will have to use the microphone, the dreaded microphone. On the long ones, there's a button at the top and a button at the bottom, and once the button at the bottom makes it green, you should be good as long as the top button is on. The little lapel ones, there's just one button and it should turn green as well.
Hello? Okay.
Yay!
I'm Taryn Anderson from the University of Dallas in Irving.
I'm Katie Martinez from St. Edward's University.
I'm Erin Mack from St. Edward's University.
Also from St. Ed's, I'm Annie Hinojosa.
Myrna Wyckoff from Dallas Baptist University.
I'm Kemp Tucker from Dallas Baptist University.
Jimmy Criswell from Dallas Baptist University.
He's new. I'm Brett Hawkins from Dallas Baptist University.
Here.
Yeah, it's working now. Hi, I'm Carrie Ann Mance. I'm from University of St. Thomas in Houston.
Hilaria Puente from Rice University.
Iris Alejandro from Rice University.
Amanda Jarovic, Rice University.
Kelly Graves, Baylor.
Logan Parker, Southwestern University.
Denise Carroll, Southwestern University.
Joseph Knight, Southern Methodist University.
Hello, I'm Branche Bertal from SMU as well.
The person who raised the average age of this group is Carol McDonald at ICUT, and I'm a short timer there as I'm retiring in September.
Mary Smith, Concordia University, Texas.
Ashley Bocasio from Concordia University.
Kathy Horn, Concordia University.
And I'm Aurora Fine from Concordia University.
Is that everybody? Okay, and just to let you know, we did have some people register that are supposed to be listening online. We have people from Texas Lutheran, Southwestern University, Southwestern Adventist University, Southern Methodist University, Paul Quinn, Jacksonville, Howard Payne, and then there's some state institutions on here. I'm not sure they're truly listening, but we'll see. I don't know. So, since we are running a little bit early, Jane suggested that I might kind of go over some information that's available to you that you may or may not realize is available to you. This is our Grants and Special Programs website that Raphael has pulled up over here, and we try to maintain an abundance of information out on that website to make available to you. This is not something that's available to students. It's just for your use. We try to put out the allocation information out here, the program guideline information every year, the Q&As that we do on a monthly basis. We have put all of them out here, and we have a reference on how you can cross-reference all the different Q&As that we've put out to see if there's a question or an answer to a question that you're wanting to pose to see if it's already been answered before. But just to kind of give you an idea, if you scroll down under general information, you just have some very general information about the grants and special programs. We have a section for our Financial Aid Advisory Committee. When they meet, we put the agenda out there, the minutes from that meeting, how you can get to the recording, etc. of that meeting. Then the part that you probably deal with the most is the next section, the program-specific information. If you'll scroll down a little bit further, Raphael, to get it higher up, yeah. And you can see that there are different, all of the programs that we will have information to share with you. You'll have like the TEG. If you'll go ahead and click on TEG, you can see that the allocation information is out there, the guideline information is out there, and if you'll click on guidelines, this is something that we update and try to make available to you. It's kind of condensed version of the statute and rules so that it's easier for you to reference, maybe put into layman's terms. But it has like the program authorization and purpose. Talks about the state priority deadline, even though you're not required as an independent institution to implement the priority deadline, you are encouraged to do so. So it talks about that. The allocations and the methodology used to come up with those allocations, a brief explanation about that. Program definitions, as you know, we currently in the TEG program have the original program, and then we have the revised 2006 revised TEG program to give you a definition of what those two programs are. And then we go into the student eligibility for initials and renewals so that you can see for the year what the student eligibility requirements are for a student to be eligible in the TEG program. And then the award amounts, the maximum award amounts that you can award to that student. So we have all of that there. How to do required proration, what's a hardship for the program. I mean, it's just all of the information that we think that you need to know about at a glance to help you with the administration of the TEG program. It goes on with the tuition differential, satisfactory academic progress requirements. Then it how to request for funds for the program. Just a bunch of information. Then the program schedule to kind of give you an idea for the year, TEG at a glance, at a year, what you're going to have to do and the reports that you're going to have to submit. So that's for TEG. The other program that you may want this information for is the College Work Study Program, the Texas College Work Study Program, and there's a section for that as well. And there's another guideline sheet that you can use to get some basic information about the Texas College Work Study Program. And we're not going to go through it, but it's basically the same sections, but for that particular program. So you have that for a guideline if you need it. What are some other things that you know of, Raphael, that on the website that might be of interest? Or do y'all have questions about any of the information that we have out there? Or the other thing is if you know of something you would like to have out there that we don't have out there. As I said, this is for you at the institutional level. It's not for the students. This is for you. So if there's something that we don't put out here that you would like to have us put out there, please let us know and we'll try to get it out there. Yes, if you can use the microphone. The dreaded microphone. That's okay.
Is the program login how you get to the request funds, or is that a different thing?
Yeah, you go to TEG, under TEG, and you'll see funds request form. It will go to that because that is, it used to be that the whole site was password protected, and it has changed, whereas you can just get into this part of it without a password, but when you go into submitting a funds request or looking up information for a student, that's going to be password protected. Good question, though. If you'll go back, and I'm trying to think what else we have on there. Go to the Q&A section, maybe, so they can kind of see that. I don't know if y'all... Okay, but there you can see that there's a cross-reference for all of the Q&As, and it'll pop up, and you'll see, like, for TEG somewhere. You can go out there and it'll take you to the section of the cross-reference to show you the questions that have been asked and what publication that that particular question was answered in. And so I hope you find that helpful. But that's the Q&A. You do? Well, good. Yay.
Hey, Lynn.
Yes.
How do we get new staff members on the listserv to make sure they get the Q&A?
That's a very good question. There is a site that you have to go to, and I don't have it right here in front of me, but I can get that to you. But there's a site that you go to actually subscribe, so anybody can subscribe, and they subscribe, and once they fill out the information and we approve it on our end, then they will start receiving everything that's sent to the distribution list.
Is that the bottom of the ones we get? Can we just forward it to that person?
I don't think it's at the bottom of what you're receiving. I could be wrong. That may be but just send me an email and I'll be happy to get that to you. Actually, if you go to the Q&A, that's been a Q&A before, and there will be a question on how do I subscribe to the distribution list, and the link will be in there if you need to subscribe. But if you go back now, Raphael, to the website.
Lynn,
yes.
Can we get the address for subscribing and give it to them after lunch?
Sure. Be happy to do that. Trying to think what else is on here. There's information about residency, because which we're about to talk about, but I know that's probably something that you may have questions about, which y'all are a little different than our public schools, where residency is determined in the admissions office area, and for TEG and work study you have to determine it in your office, so that makes it a little bit more challenging for the awards that you make. There you go. There's how you subscribe. It's that whole address that he just put gray over.
Can you read it out?
Sure. It's http://lists, lists.state.tx.us/mailman /list-info/txgnsp-l.
I said, say that 3 times.
Okay, don't know. Okay, so anything else on the GSP website? I don't know what else is down at the bottom. Yes. This is, where if you were going out to look for the agenda and the different PowerPoints, et cetera, for this particular workshop, we housed all of that out there so that it would be easy for you to get to. But again, if you think of anything that you would like to see out there, please let us know and we'll be happy to try to do that. Any questions about any of that information or the guidelines that we make available or the Q&As or anything? Okay, well, it took up a few minutes. Okay, now we're going to let Connie Cooper, also Assistant Director of Grants and Special Programs, she's going to speak to you about the residency, how to determine residency. And she is, I don't know if you saw her when she walked in, but she is on crutches. So we're going to let her present from where she's sitting. And I've already checked, the cameras are going to be able to move over there, and she has her microphone. So I think we're good to go.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me? Great. All right. I guess before we get started, how many people actually handle the residency decisions in your office? Show of hands. Okay. Several. So you handle the questions from parents, students, mostly students, and you actually are responsible for making the decisions, right? Okay. And sometimes you all ever call us and ask us for questions? That's good, because we can't answer your questions. We can answer, we just can't tell you, we just can't make the decisions for you. We can provide you with guidance, advice, possibly our opinion, but ultimately residency decisions must be made by the institution. And sometimes we get students that are, I think inadvertently, they're playing the institution against the core team or back and forth. And so we try to avoid that as much as possible. We give all of the authority to you all. So I just wanted to make sure that y'all were aware of that. but we'll help if we can. So with that said, yeah, let's try to get this to work from here. There you go. Okay, generally the residency process, as some of you know, starts with the student completing and submitting the core questions. Everyone familiar with the core questions? All right. You evaluate the response, make classification decisions. Student accepts it or appeals, depending on the answer. And prior decision confirmed or reversed. Situations change. Reclassifications sometimes are needed, and which might require you to go back and review a decision that was previously made. And there are provisions in the rules that allow you to reverse a decision, or to, maybe I shouldn't say reverse, to correct a decision that was previously made that may have been incorrect. Some important resources. Sorry. I'm uncoordinated here. That you might need when determining residency are the statutes. Does everyone know where to find the statutes online? I have it bookmarked. It's in large font. It's on my desktop. I go to the statutes a lot. The statutes are pretty easy once you get to Texas Legislative Online is the general website. You punch in or log in your what kind of code you're looking for. Residency would be under the education code, the citation, and the section that deals with whatever section you're looking for, and it'll pop up. The statutes are really what drives the decisions. If something is in the statute or not in the statute, and you can't find it addressed in the rules, that might be a decision that if you can't determine the answer on your own, you might have to take it to your legal counsel, if that's a possibility. Residency statutes do not address every single instance or case that you might encounter. So I'm sure y'all are aware of that. So some of it it's not as clear cut, and it's not as thorough, perhaps, as some of you might like to see. But I think it generally gets to the main questions that you need to ask in determining the residency of a student. The rules are another good resource. Those are also on our main website, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board main website. If y'all don't know where that one is, we can send you the link to that. And of course, the core residency questions, which aren't they included in the Apply Texas application?
Yes.
Okay, so if you use that application, they're in there. They're also on the website. Do a search on College for All Texans on core residency, I believe. And you can pull up those questions. We maintain the questions, but we don't, what am I trying to say? We don't determine all the questions that go into the questionnaire. I think it's kind of a collaborative effort. And who maintains that? Is it?
The core questions were designed and developed by a residency advisory committee that we had for years here at the coordinating board. So by institutions who work in that field. They haven't changed for quite a while because statutes have not changed for quite a while. They are basically the same in the form that we have on our website and the form that's included in the Apply Texas form. And although they are slightly different, either one is by rule acceptable for your use in collecting the data for making decisions. The intent of the core questions was to get everyone asking the same questions, so we're getting some consistency in what's being considered. And so you can't add questions to the core you can add instructions. If you have students who are consistently misinterpreting a question, you can add some instructions there to try to clarify it. But you can't add additional questions to the core. The intent is to keep that very consistent among institutions, so a student moving from one school to another will get a similar answer. Still doesn't work that way, but it's closer than it used to be.
And the core questions also contain the affidavits.
Correct.
For the undocumented who need to sign and submit that to your institutions. We'll talk about that later. Another resource is, I provided it as a handout, is the residency decision tree. And I don't have a picture of it in the presentation, but if you pull down the handouts, you could get a copy. And it basically just asks, when you first look at it, it seems a little overwhelming, but if you just look at it, it's really just answering 8 or so questions. And as long as you can answer those questions, you can pretty much use it to figure out the residency of a student. Just some of those, I'm not going to read them all, but some of them are, is the student a continuing student? Was the student previously classified as a resident, perhaps at a different institution? Was the student in Texas 36 months leading up to graduation, high school graduation, or GED, and had lived here 1 year prior to enrollment? Is a student a dependent or an independent student? Is the student a U.S. citizen or permanent resident? So those are the kinds of questions the core questions answer, but also the residency decision tree utilize in order to get you to the answer of yes or no. Any questions about that? Okay. I guess some people may disagree, but we believe there are 4 paths, common paths to residency, that are probably the most direct and the easiest ones to use. Not all students will fall in one of these categories, of course, but these are probably the most common and the easiest. Of course, the 36 months of high school graduation. And for students who are not U.S. citizens, that would include the affidavit, which institutions must obtain from the students. They must maintain it at their institution, and you must remind students on an annual basis that they need to apply for residency as soon as possible. U.S. residency. That's what the affidavit includes. It's a letter of intent, basically. A dependent of a parent who has established a domicile is another path. If the child is a dependent, the parent would have had to have been employed or lived in the state for 12 months leading to the student's enrollment. Very common path. Is the student continuously enrolled? Which, for purposes of residency, they had to have been enrolled at least for 1 regular semester, either fall or spring, in the previous academic year. And then the last would be, is the student an independent student? Are they married? And did they establish and maintain a domicile in Texas the 12 months prior to enrollment? Those are the 4 paths. Any questions about those? Okay. All right. Some documentation. Sorry. Oh. Some documentation that you might need to ask for, and certainly you should require in some cases. Of course, the core questions. Like Jane said, you can tweak the instructions, but you can tweak the instructions, but you can't tweak the questions. Affidavits, if the student is not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. College transcripts, you could use that to determine continuous enrollment. High school transcripts for the 36 months. Visas, only certain visas allow students to domicile. I believe it's the I get these confused. The V1?
Well,
I'm putting Jane on the spot.
I can't recite them, but there is a list on the College for All Texans website that has a yes or no for the various visa types. There are more of them that do not qualify than do qualify. So you do, if you have a student here on a visa, you do want to check that list.
And then proof of domicile. Can y'all hear me? It sounds like is that okay?
It's just that's helping with the feedback to not be directly in front of you.
Maybe this, because of this. Okay, proof of domicile from the parent would be 12 months of perhaps their utility bills, pay stubs showing that they're employed in the state, home ownership, and not just one of these would be relevant. It would be a combination of these documents, I would think. Okay, any questions about documentation? Okay. All right. We've included kind of little snapshots from the residency decision tree of the 4 paths to residency, and kind of little summary charts, little cheat sheets, if you will, that will just go through the main questions. And I need my glasses because I can't see. For instance, for the 36 months, if you're trying to establish a student meets the 36 months, other questions you would add, you have the high school transcript. Other questions, is a student a U.S. citizen or permanent resident? If not, then they need to sign the affidavit. If so, they're a resident. Okay? Basically, any no's to the questions you need to use the core questions to perhaps establish the answer. You may need to ask more questions. You may need to obtain more documentation. The documentation you have, if you are unsure, needs to be clear and convincing evidence. Okay? Path 2, if the student is a dependent of a resident, what are the questions? Is a parent domiciled in Texas? Have they been employed here for 12 months? Okay, yeah, thanks. Obviously, I don't have hand-eye coordination. Has a parent been employed for 12 months? What documentation can you provide? I had a situation a couple of months ago. A mom called regarding this. She had 11 months of documentation of her employment and not 12, and wanted to know if that was okay. And I had to send her, I said, unless you have something else for that 12 months, in addition to the employment, the school would be in their right to decline or deny it. So the student would have to wait till the mother was here actually 12 months and working. So that was unusual. Anyway, again, the no's lead to non-resident. The yeses make the student a resident. Is an independent student. The student married. Is the student's spouse a Texas resident? Has the student or spouse maintained a domicile in Texas for 12 months? If yes, resident. If no, perhaps you need more documentation, but chances are they're non-resident. And then continuous enrollment. Were they enrolled last fall or spring? If yes, they're a resident. If no, maybe more questions. What else? What were they doing? Did they stop out a month? Did they stop out the summer? What else possibly is in the student situation? But when in doubt, I think you're going to have to err on the side of caution. If you don't have enough evidence, then the student would be a non-resident. Any questions? No? Okay. A couple questions, and I do have the handout with the answers. I didn't bring them to you, but they are listed, and you may have already printed them off. Here's just a couple questions. George moved to Texas to live with his grandmother when he was a freshman in high school. His parents live in Oklahoma and still claim him. If he graduates in Texas and goes to a Texas college, is he a resident of Texas or Oklahoma? Anyone? How about...
She's trying to...
Okay.
Texas, based on path 1.
It's worth the wait. Okay. A couple different ways to go on this one. If the student could qualify under the 36 months. However, the student might also be a dependent of his parents, and they're Oklahoma residents, so therefore he's an Oklahoma resident. So it depends on the approach. It depends on what documentation can be provided. So, I wrote. Question.
Yes, I'd always understood there was a hierarchy you recommended to follow, that, in other words, path 1 was called as such because you should start there. In which case, we should say, yes, he's a Texas resident. But I'm hearing the answer, it depends. Can you explain that?
Well, I think it would depend on what the student can provide. I would, go for the 36 months. That's certainly the easiest, the clearest. So just depends on that particular student's situation. But yes, I would always go for that one first.
Wow, okay. It sort of blows my mind philosophically that one university may be able to get all the papers from someone and the other can't, and now we've got two different answers for the same exact person.
And that happens.
Okay, enough said.
If I may, the other thing that can be happening here is, remember, 36 months has two parts. You're here the 36 months prior to high school graduation or receipt of a GED, and the 12 months prior to enrolling in college. So if he didn't meet both of those, then he would be an Oklahoma resident. If he did meet both of those, then he could be a Texas resident. So as Connie indicated, the documentation is relevant. Okay?
Okay. Virginia's 28 years old. She's a spring chicken. She worked in Texas from 2008 to 2012, but has not worked since, though she has continued to live in Texas. She doesn't own a home or business in Texas. Is she a resident or a non-resident? Okay, what questions might you ask? She's 28. I'm sorry? That's a, yes, could you repeat that?
I mean, you repeat.
Okay. We're trying to pass a mic, but the question was, is she on public assistance? That would be a relevant question. Is she an independent student? She's 28. Possibly she's considered an independent student. If so, look at her employment, if she was employed. Was her employment for at least half the year for at least the year? Okay. I think you could also see if she was married to a Texas resident. That would also be something you could look for. Okay?
Yeah. One of the points that we were trying to make in this sample was that they don't have to currently be working. If they have met the requirements for establishing domicile and they continue to live in Texas, then if they haven't moved out of state or they haven't had an extended absence from the state, they don't lose that claim to Texas residency. So they don't have to currently be employed in the state of Texas, nor does it have to have been the 12 months prior to enrolling for that student to have established a claim to Texas residency at some point in time and still maintain it.
Any questions about that one?
The tricky part there is having any kind of evidence that she has remained in Texas has not lived elsewhere, has not lost her claim to domicile in Texas. That's a pretty difficult thing for someone to prove. But if she has, if she's been living in an apartment in Texas and can show that she's continued to have a lease, someone mentioned public assistance. She could have been living off of public assistance, and that could give her continued claim to residency in Texas.
Okay, next one. Marie is a teacher and takes classes towards her master's degree each summer. Last summer, she was classified as a resident. Is she a resident this year? Which path would you look at? She's only in the summer. She was a resident. Could you use continuous enrollment? No.
Why?
Why not? Right, correct. It has to be fall or spring, so she wouldn't qualify under that. But she was a previous resident. So what other things might you look for? Okay, employment. Yeah, what's she doing during the year? Good one. Okay. Clark, where'd you get these names, Jay? Clark graduated high school in Texas in 1980, having lived here all of his life. He now wants to go to college. Is he a resident or non-resident? People are shaking their heads, yes. Clark is a resident. Why? If he lived here all his life, then he went to high school here for the 36 months, has been here, that would make him the resident. Okay? Does everybody understand that one?
Any chance that Clark is an affidavit student?
Clark might be an affidavit student.
So you might have to look at visa and determine whether an affidavit is required, but it certainly sounds like otherwise that he's a...
All right, just a couple more. Daniel paid the resident tuition rate last fall while attending a public institution in Texas. He is now transferred to your institution. Is he a resident or a non-resident? Nods, shaking heads, yes. Why? Under which path would he qualify as a resident? He was enrolled last fall. Yeah, the continuous enrollment.
Okay, I'm going to throw in a monkey wrench.
Curve.
Paying resident tuition doesn't mean you're a resident. If you look at, can the transcript indicate whether they're paying resident rate because of a waiver or if he's an actual resident? So if it is someone transferring to your institution, you want to look at the transcript to determine whether it's a non-resident paying the resident rate. Trick question. Gotcha. But relevant, there are a lot of people who get waivers at public institutions. So.
And I believe we have a question from someone online.
First question of the day from online viewers. It says, on the first question about George,
yes,
would it be relevant to ask the student if he moved home with his parents during each summer? You might want to go back to George.
You asked where I got the names. George is my brother's name. Yeah. Okay. If he is going home every summer, he has not been residing there for 36 straight months, and therefore he would be an Oklahoma resident. Good question.
Okay. All right. Sophia was granted deferred action status and has been working in Texas for 12 months under a work authorization card. Does this make her a resident of Texas? Which path might you look at? Well, there's a couple. Okay, we have an answer, dependent versus independent. Yes. I'm sorry? Yes, if so, she would need an affidavit. And the deferred action status would not change her qualifications for residency or non-residency. Okay?
So she has to do it through 36 months.
Yeah, she had, I'm sorry?
So she would have to qualify through the 36-month approach. Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The deferred action in and of itself would not make her a resident. Even the work authorization would not make her a resident. But if she did the 36-month approach, she could establish residency that way. And the only impact of the deferred action was that she would be able to legally work in the state. Deferred action is a temporary status granted by the federal government, but it doesn't change the fact that she's an undocumented or not someone here legally, and therefore it doesn't allow her to domicile in the state. But if she had the 36-month approach, by state law, she'd be allowed to pay the resident rate.
Okay, that was tricky.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you gave us a trick question. Now I'm going to ask a can of worms question back. Okay.
Must be residency.
Well, yeah, it's about residency. If ever we're confronted with a student who has been struggling with homelessness as they come, how does that affect determination of residency, and how does that complicate things, as in getting documentation, et cetera, fitting definitions?
You want to take this?
I don't know the answer to that. How do y'all handle homelessness?
We haven't yet. That's why I called it the can of worms question.
Yeah.
Just now opening the can. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the homelessness is difficult to prove. If they have documentation from a service organization that's been taking care of them, if there's some kind of document, especially if there's a legal estrangement from the family, and therefore a court proof that the parents are not providing any kind of support, then the student can be declared an independent. If they're living off of public benefit, then that can be considered employment. So there's some special considerations in those, but it's obviously something that some significant documentation would be needed. It might be that a disinterested third party could help document that this is a non-functional family and this student is unable to live at home, and maybe move you in that direction. The problem really is how is a student surviving? And if it's through public assistance, and there is documentation of the estrangement from the family, then they may well be able to, you may be able to handle them as an exception to all the other cases. You don't get to ask any more questions.
Oh, I'm going to explain why I asked it. Because there was a recent news story in the past month that highlighted a young woman's experience with homelessness in Maryland, or is it D.C.? Anyway, she's going to college on the East Coast with lots of scholarships. She managed to either be salutatorian or be top 5% of her class anyway, and did wonderfully. So I can see that's plausible in our world to happen.
Well, and certainly if it's possible to find justification and you have a person who belongs in college, you want to do whatever you can to try to enable that to happen, but you can't make it up. So you've got to have some documentation. And again, a disinterested third party is very helpful. And it could be a minister that's known the family for a long time, a teacher who has known the family situation and knows that if this child goes back into that family, there are going to be bad things happening.
Perhaps they'd have to get a notarized statement.
Yeah,
or some,
it is not a trivial thing to document.
I think the documentation would need to be something that you could support if you're audited.
Yeah. Documentation on residency is very much almost a personal thing as to what you feel your comfort zone is. The issue of whether you require students to give you a copy of their visa or you take their word as it's been written on the Common App or the whatever, that's your call. But if you end up in an audit situation, you may well be asked to provide that documentation and have to go to the student and ask for it at that point. Yes, ma'am.
On the other hand, we do have to be careful. I had a young lady she was in Texas from California from a wealthy family, and she chose to be homeless when her father really was paying for her insurance and all that. When I delved into the situation, she chose to be homeless.
Right.
When she really had parents, she just was not choosing to do what they wanted her to do.
Right. Well, and the problem with dealing with human beings is that you've got soup to nuts, and we've got the residency rules. We've got a fairly small amount of statute. We've got a fairly large number of rules, and students still manage to fall between the cracks. And you're always interpolating, extrapolating, guessing, and doing your best thing. Most important is to be consistent in the way you treat students, to document your decisions. And then you could have an auditor come in and look at you and disagree with you, and that could end up being written up. But that's just part of the reality of the world you're dealing with. These are a lot of, when I talk about residency, I say it's an art, not a science. These are not kids that fall, you've got a lot of nice people that you can easily identify, but the ones that you spend your time with and that you work with are the ones who are, you think maybe yes, but maybe not, and you've got to make those decisions and move forward. TEG, we're dealing with, we don't have enough money for everybody. So in general, what we've said in the past at some of these meetings is if you are in doubt, leave them out of the program. We'd rather not have the program get a black eye because some inappropriate award got in the news or something like that. At the same time, you've got good students who deserve to have the opportunity to go to college if you have enough documentation to feel you can back up your decision.
I have a question from online. Is a custodial parent via divorce agreement considered the same as the parent of a dependent for residency, regardless of their ability to meet the 51% support requirement required to claim as such on a 1040, or does the support requirement trump all? Dun, dun, dun.
We may need to do some research on that, because I'm not quite sure how to define a custodial parent. If the student is living with that parent, but the child support is coming from the other parent.
The other parent usually has the ability to claim the student on the income tax return because of the child support. That's
right.
Something financial aid people deal with a lot.
Yeah, and
the housing is
that's correct.
Is the first line. Don't look at the first.
Okay, well, I believe the state definition of is being eligible to be claimed as a dependent. And so the person who is providing 51% of the support, whether it's in kind by house and so forth, or by payment of child support, you could probably justify either one. You have situations where you have split custody, and they live with one parent 1 year and the other parent the other year, and those are just nightmares to deal with as far as eligibility for state aid if that other parent is out of state. So I don't know that I answered that question, but I'll be glad to do some more looking at it and try to come up with the definitions and so forth.
We'll put it in the next Q&A. How about that?
Oh, well, let's find out what the answer is.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Once you get your answer, we'll put it in the Q&A.
Well, if the answer is, well, it depends, we may not be able to put it in the Q&A, but we'll see. We'll at least respond to this individual with the best answer we have. One of the challenges of dealing with residency is the fact that you're hearing 5 pieces of this 500-piece puzzle that is a student when you get this kind of a question. And so giving a definitive answer is a really scary thing for us. And we often end up in the case where the student told us 5 things and they told the school 2 of those but 3 other things. And so we end up with that conflict, and we don't want to go there. So with institutions, we'll do our best to say, in our opinion, this is what it is, but it's still going to end up being the school's call, because you're the ones who do the documentation and have to answer to the audit. But we'll try to get an answer for that, but I don't know that I'll want to put it in the Q&A for everyone to see.
You want just a bit?
We have one more?
Just one more slide.
Okay.
Just kind of...
That's
some things to remember. Keep it as simple as possible. Document, document, document. And when in doubt, leave them out. Okay? One thing that's not in your slides that I was going to mention is during the session that's coming up next year, we expect residency to be a very hot topic, as it usually is, but some sessions more so than others. This one I think is going to be pretty relevant, so stay tuned. We don't know anything, haven't heard anything, and won't know until the session's over and we see which bills are passed. So just kind of put it on your radar.
Yep.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, because we're still early, what we're going to do, we'll still get you out of here by 11:30 so you can get to lunch and before the crowds get to the different restaurants. Let's go ahead and we're going to move Sophia up on the agenda. She was immediately after lunch to talk about CBID, but we're going to go ahead. Her presentation is only a few minutes, so we're going to go ahead and let her talk about CBID, and then we will break for lunch. Sophia? Oh, you want me to, we moved that for just a second. Oh, yeah, it's best.
I did want to mention that on the Grants and Special Programs information website, we have a link to the listserv up at the top. Go up, I noticed you right there. General information, Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board Student Listserv. Do you see it? And the link is available there. So if you didn't write it down, you can go to the website, you can click the link, and you can register. Okay. I'm going to be talking to y'all from California. I don't normally say that. I say you guys, and everybody's like, what do you mean, you guys? So about our new security protocol. We are implementing new security protocols. It's something familiar for most of everyone here that it is implemented in federal websites. Our protocol is all for privacy and FERPA purposes. It really is only going to affect those financial aid workers who request funds. Right now, there's an ID and password that is used to log in and request funds that is pretty universal and has been around for quite a long time. We are going to be implementing a new system where you will have individualized IDs and password. This new protocol will actually require us to have a liaison at your institution who will work with us and identifying what staff is going to be eligible to receive an ID and password and approving accepting their access and denying or removing their access. So it'll be more self-sufficient. It'll be in the school, we'll have control over who can access the database and who cannot. This liaison, right now, we're going to go ahead and assume initially that the financial aid directors will be the liaison contact. We'll be sending out emails and manual instructions. It's a very user-friendly software program, web-based, that you'll log into, create an ID and password, and then see yourself and see any other users. If the financial aid financial aid director chooses not to be that contact for the institution, they would reply back and give us the email address for the person that they are going to be assigning this responsibility to. Oh, that was basically it. Does anyone have any questions? It's really short. This is upcoming. I can tell you that we are hoping to send out these emails this upcoming month and for it to be implemented by September 1st. So starting this next fiscal year, when you start requesting funds, you will now have an individual ID and password. We don't foresee any hiccups or delays, but hopefully it all works smoothly.
Does this only apply to the fund request sign-in? Are they changing anything with the SFTP?
No,
report?
It only requires a fund request sign-in. It may affect other websites that you have with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board that you access. CBID is going to eventually apply across the board. What's nice about this web-based program is that once you have an ID and password, that is your ID and password for like any web-based program you have with us. So you won't have to remember so many IDs and passwords, which I can't. I always forget mine, so.
So it will be separate from the loan one?
It will be separate from the loan for now, right, for now. And hopefully we'll all go into that same direction. You'll have one ID and password when you log in for grants, for loans, for any other web-based program with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask if the updating of financial aid estimator would be included in that kind of access.
No, mainly because it does not have FERPA information. It's cumulative information, so it's not necessary. So you can keep that posted on your. No problem. Any other questions? If you do have questions, there's the distribution list again. Our website is a very useful tool, and also my contact information and the basic grants info contact information. Okay.
Okay. Well, it is 11:15. We can give you a longer lunch if you want to, and y'all can be back at 1 and we can proceed as we normally would at 1. Or we can have you back at 12:30 and we'll get the presentations this afternoon to be moved up a little bit, and then you can be done a little bit earlier and get back on the road. Which would you rather do? 12:30. Okay. So we will go ahead and break for lunch and we will resume again at 12:30. Be putting the evaluation form on your desk so that you will have that for submitting to us at the end. So we will take a break for lunch and we'll resume at 12:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And thank everyone for rushing back to hear about compliance monitoring. It's an exciting topic. Do we have any participants who have been through one of our compliance monitoring engagements? Anybody willing to admit that? I was going to identify you as survivors, but we won't go there. Actually, we want to just give a brief overview of our compliance monitoring process. My name is Mark Pale. I'm Director of Internal Audit and Compliance here at the Coordinating Board. And this is a good opportunity for us to visit with the private institutions, just to share with you, sort of give you a perspective on our function, where we came from, kind of how we're staffed and how we go about our process, and then to answer any questions that you may have. And also, for this group, which is the only group that we'll do this for, we actually will have a preview of the institutions that are on our next year's compliance plan that you may be interested to know. I have the listing of private institutions that made our plan, and our plan will go to the board. I'll present that on Wednesday to our board for approval. So I guess you could say this is a pre-approved plan, but typically they go with whatever it is that we recommend. So I can share with you the institutions that we plan on visiting this next year. So if you could. We were actually born, our function was born out of the Sunset Advisory Commission review. That group asked for a more explicitly defined compliance monitoring function, and they wanted us to be organized along two main dimensions. One of those dimensions is formula funding, which does not impact this group to a great extent. But the other dimension does impact this group, and that's any and all forms of financial aid, grants, programs that are administered by this agency. What the Sunset Advisory Commission wanted was a outward-facing compliance monitoring function, such that various groups of stakeholders could be kept informed about the use of funds and compliance with the requirements for the various programs that we audit. As with other areas that I heard in some of the presentations this morning, our function is no different from the standpoint of negotiated rulemaking. So we convened a group that went through the negotiated rulemaking process for compliance monitoring. Some of your institutions were represented at the table as we went through that process. I think Carol McDonald, ICUT was represented, and so we came out with unanimous consensus on the rules that we actually follow to conduct our work. And in a few moments, after I give this overview, Netta Senjar will walk you through the actual steps of a compliance monitoring engagement. So you can see, I guess the key on this slide is letter B. Letter A. It's the funding aspect that would bring us to visit your campus. This is how we're structured organizationally. I report to the board wearing two separate hats, one as internal audit director and the other as director of compliance. And so our compliance team, through the legislative process, was funded with 4 compliance specialist positions, and they are the individuals that would be having the primary contact with you, and that would be you'll see their friendly faces when they show up to perform a site visit, or perhaps not see their friendly faces, but correspond with them if you're selected for a desk review. I think this is getting towards the last of the overview slides, and I guess the takeaway from this slide is that compliance monitoring is a function that had previously been performed not only by the coordinating board but also by the state auditor's office, and you had various, I guess, players in performing audit work at institutions across the state, public and private, and reporting on those results. And so the function that has been established here at the coordinating board, those entities are now looking to us to perform that work. So we coordinate, we have discussions with the state auditor's office and others to talk to them about our work, to share our results. And so it's certainly not a duplicative kind of thing. It's something that we coordinate, and we're really the point person in terms of conducting this type of work. And this is where I will ask Ms. Senjar to present, but before she steps up to the microphone, we have 25 engagements on our fiscal year 2015 compliance monitoring plan, and of those 25, we have 6 institutions that are private, and so it looks like 5 of those 6 will be the CAL program, and then 1 of them will be a Beyond Time project. So the CAL programs are St. Edward's, Southern Methodist University, Abilene Christian, Rice, and Trinity. And the Beyond Time project would be at Texas Lutheran University. So unless something would change on Wednesday when this plan is presented for approval, I thought that I would go ahead and share with you those that have been selected. And Netta will actually give you some indication as to perhaps how your institution was selected through our process that we use to develop our plan. And so I will turn it over now to Netta.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you for your time. And if I'm going too fast or anything throughout the presentation, please stop me. If you have any question, just let me know. Like Mark mentioned, that this process was a recommendation of the Sunset Committee. Our process of selecting your institutions every year is based on a risk assessment that we do, which we just completed it. There are several different factors that are taken into consideration when we are selecting the institutions that are going to be reviewed next fiscal year or academic year. Some of the main ones, as you can see listed there, is the amount of financial aid that the institution receives, whether you're required to submit an independent audit or not, when was the last audit conducted, and the result of that last audit. These are some of the main ones. Sometimes we've heard from institutions when we contact them about scheduling an audit, we get the question, what happened? Did we do something? What's going on? So we just want to let you know it has nothing to do with anything negative or wrong going. It's just based on the history of the institution, number of students you have, amount of financial aid that you receive, that you have been selected. Once the institutions are selected, and of course there are 4 compliance specialists, they're being assigned to a compliance specialist, we start the process of notifying each of your campuses. Our first contact is with the reporting official. We identify them through our program staff, and we will contact you to let you know that we are planning to come to your campus and the type of audit that we're going to conduct at that time, whether it's formula funding or financial aid, and the type, whether it's BOT or CAL or any other type of audit. And we try always to schedule the time that works, of course, for both of us. So we usually give a couple of different options and see which one works with your schedule, of course, each campus president. If you have anything else going on, we want to, of course, be considerate of that and try to come to a date, agree on a date that would work best for both of us. Once we schedule the date, then we will send you the request of the information. There are some information we like to have in advance from you to prepare for our audit. Those information include your IT control, again, your last internal audit that you might have had, and also let you know what is the time frame that we're going to be auditing for. For example, we're looking at the spring of 2013, or which time frame that we're looking at. We communicate all of that with you through the planning phase. We also, at that time, we like also to know if we're going to be given access to your student information system or not, because if we are, then we can just look at everything while you're on your campus. If we are not going to be getting access to the system and you're going to just provide us with a printout of the material, then we'll send you the sample so you can prepare for that in advance and have it ready before our visit. Once the date is, of course, confirmed, all the planning phases has been completed. The first day of site visit is going to be for the entrance conference. The entrance conference is usually very brief meeting with all the executive team, the campus president, and it's basically just to let you all know the scope of our audit, again, go over what we're going to be reviewing, the expectation, and the time frame. We usually plan our audits for 1 week, Monday through Friday, but we do our best to finish it as soon as possible. And we understand, of course, there are so much business operation side going on campus, and we don't want to be in any way impacting that. So we try to get out of your way as soon as possible. And we'll set all of those expectations from day one, let you know what to expect, and also confirm what's going to be our communication method with you throughout this audit. We always keep you informed on daily basis as far as what we have reviewed so far, if there are any questions, any concerns, and give you the opportunity, of course, to address them while we are still on site. And if any additional supporting documentation or information is needed to clear any issues that we come up with. Right after the audit, of course, the field work process starts, and that's reviewing in details and with supporting documentation each area that is under review. For example, if you're doing a formula funding audit, we might be looking at the contact hours for each course. If it's a BO time audit, we're going to be looking at the student's eligibility. And this is, again, what we would have communicated with you throughout the planning phase to let you know what are the specific information that we're going to be looking at when we are on your campus. And as I mentioned before, of course, throughout this audit, we will keep you informed, let you know of any issues that we come up with, and give you the opportunity to address them or provide additional information. Anything that has not been addressed or cleared at that point, on the last day of audit, we'll do a preliminary meeting, which again will just cover everything that is still pending. We'll let you and the executive team know what is still pending, what hasn't been resolved, and what is going to be the next step. At that point, we are not considering those findings because we'll bring those issues back. Of course, for us compliance specialists, we'll share them with our director and also share them with the program staff and get their recommendation and their input into how to move forward to next step. So some of those issues, they still have the possibility to be resolved, so that's why we don't call them finding or anything at that point. And they may suggest additional documentation that you can provide to clear them, which again will communicate that to you and give you the opportunity to do that. If anything is, throughout this process still hasn't been resolved and there is no way of providing any additional information that would clear it, then it would be considered a finding and it will go into the draft report. Once the draft report is completed, of course, you will receive a copy of that. You will be given a draft copy for review, and the final copy will be distributed to all the individuals, of course, involved in this audit, and also to the program staff, the board members, and the Sunset Committee members. At that point is when we do an exit conference, and it could be in person or over the phone, depending on where the campus is and if we can conduct it in person or not. Sometimes if there is no finding at all, if the report didn't have any finding, we may basically combine that sending out the formal or the final report as an exit interview. In cases that we have some outstanding issues and we require a plan of action, of course, you will be given that information when we send out the report. When is your deadline to submit your plan of action, to submit any response as to how you're going to be addressing or taking care of the finding that we had. And again, depending on the impact of that finding or how severe it was, we may have to do a follow-up, come back to your campus and review that information again. But again, all of that is case-by-case situation, depends on what we find and what was the area of deficiency that we identified. And like I mentioned, the report will be then distributed to board members, commissioner, deputy commissioner, and Sunset Advisory Commission. That was pretty much the process for the site visit. We are also working on a pilot program for the desk review. We are still in the kind of earliest stages of that. As far as the scope of audit, it's pretty much going to be the same. You will be also contacted in advance, let you know that your school is selected for a desk review. The only main difference is that we will do the review from office here. Basically, we won't be on your campus. So any information that we need to review, we're going to be asking you to either submit it through email or a secure website for us to review it. In the case that if we see some significant deficiencies or if there is any serious issues through the desk review process, then you may be selected for an actual site visit. But again, that's all depends on how the result of that audit going to be at the time. Any questions at this point? Are you sure? You have a chance. Well, thank you so much for your time, and you have a good afternoon.
Okay, now we're going to hear from our LPO, our loan program operations area, and I think Albert's coming up first, so I turn it over to them.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Albert Contreras, and I'm the manager, the supervisor over the loan origination area for the loan program. And first thing I want to say is for those of you who went online and printed or saw the materials, they say public institutions. These are the materials for the private, so I apologize for that. Secondly, I know what you all are thinking. It's the last session of the day, and after this you get to leave, so you're thinking, how long is this going to take and how fast can this guy talk, right? We don't have much. Amanda, she's so polite. She's saying no, but it won't take us long. Now, if I can figure out how to use this. There you go. Part of what we'll cover is our steps in reaching out to your students, our previous recipients of our loans. We'll cover some information on the College Access Loan Program and the Beyond Time program. Okay.
Right.
This happens to me at home with the remotes too, so bear with me. So for the last 4 years, you all are familiar with the changes that came about with the Higher Education Opportunity Act, Regulation Z, federal disclosures for private and state loans, and preferred lender arrangements and agreements and all that kind of stuff. And we know that's, well, kind of handicapped the awarding process for not only private loans, but for the state loans, which are considered private loans. So what we've done last year and this year is a mass emailing to all previous recipients that we've identified are still in school, haven't graduated, who received college access loans, Beyond Time loans, and the little-known Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program, which is kind of a ROTC type of a hybrid loan scholarship. Last year, I think we sent out emails late in the year. It was probably August, a little late in the year for awarding purposes and for getting students aware of it. This year we managed to get it out in June, and we sent out, I think, over 16,000 emails. So hopefully that stirred a little interest, and students are coming in and asking, which kind of relieves some of that, what do we do with packaging and awarding and things. Our goal next year is to try to get this accomplished in the March-April timeframe, which probably corresponds more with your awarding period. Oh, and the email just encourages them to go by and visit you all. There was an email, because last year we did it and didn't think to let the institutions know that we were sending out mass emails. So this year there was that announcement to give everybody kind of a heads up. Hopefully your bosses, the directors, pass that information down. We didn't get as much flack this year. So when we talk about Cal, we'll talk about eligibility requirements, some highlights, new credit guidelines that are in place now for summer awards and for next year, and new origination fee structure. We'll cover that too. When we get to Be on Time, again, the same thing. We'll cover some highlights, eligibility requirements, the annual awards for amounts for this year, some things that came out of the last legislative session, and forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is handled in a different area than the origination area. It's in our servicing area. Michelle Williams will come up and help out with that because I can't spell forgiveness, so I'll pass it on over to her at that time. So what about college access loan? On the college access loan, you don't have to demonstrate financial need. It can be used to replace all or part of the student's expected family contribution. There is one caveat, and there's some other materials on our HH Loans website concerning this, but any federal aid in terms of loans, Perkins and Direct, have to be accounted for, and that's whether or not the student accepts and receives those federal loan proceeds. Basically, our funding source and our bond agreements for our funds require that they pretty much not replace federal loan funds. So if they don't take the federal loans, they still have to be used in the calculation for awarding or the award amount for Cal. Yes, ma'am.
Microphone.
I heard you. The question was, is it just loans? Yeah. Was it just for loans? Perkins and Direct. And obviously you take into account scholarships and other things anyway. So
if they don't file a FAFSA, do we have to reduce their eligibility by a Pell Grant amount?
If they don't file a FAFSA, even for the Direct or Perkins possible eligibility, you pretty much have to assume they would have gotten it, and you account for the full amounts. No. Okay? Oh, and by the way, yeah, please yell if you have any questions. So what's it take to get a college access loan? Well, the student has to be a Texas resident, has to be enrolled at least half-time in a degree-seeking program, meet institutional SAP, and because it is a credit program, there has to be a credit evaluation that they or their cosigner must pass. The interest rate for this year, we've held it again at 5 1/4. We feel that's still very competitive. We check out as best we can other private loans, and I think the majority of them are variable rate. And unfortunately, the kiddos don't seem to read too much about what the high end of the variable rate could be. Ours is at 5 1/4 and it's fixed. If the student provides a cosigner or is required to have a cosigner, the credit requirements for the cosigner, they have to be at least 21 years of age, have a regular source of income. Yeah, go figure. They have to be able to pay it back. It seems silly. You can't cosign for yourself. And we do see students who try to cosign for themselves. So you can't be the student and cosign for yourself, and your spouse, if they're married, can't cosign for you. Obviously, again, because it's a credit-based program, they have to pass the credit evaluation. And if they're a cosigner, they have to be a U.S. citizen or a U.S. permanent resident. When Cal goes into repayment, there is a 6-month grace period. Principal balances under $30,000 get a 10-year repayment schedule. Principal balances over $30,000 get 20 years. Credit and origination fees. So what we had in place prior to about March or April of this year was a Vantage score requirement of at least 700. Vantage score is a scoring product, if you will. I think we're all familiar with what you see on TV, and that's FICO. FICO is one of several type of products because it's not just FICO that provides this service as far as a predictor of whether or not a person's ability or to repay. There's FICO, there's Beacon, there's Vantage scores, there's a number of them, and even within each, there are a number of models, as they call them. FICO probably has 2 dozen, maybe 3 dozen, one for mortgage companies, one for auto dealers, one for student loans. And so, Vantage score, the reason we use Vantage score, and we've had this question before, is we're trying to keep our costs at a minimum. This product offers everything that we need, similar to FICO, and it's cheaper. And the cheaper we can keep things in our shop, the better off we are providing that for the students. Keeps our interest rates down. So in the old world, you had to have a score of 700. In the new world, it's a Vantage score of 591. So that is a significant drop in the minimum credit requirement. In the old world, if the student or the cosigner, one or the other but not both, passed the credit evaluation, the origination fee was 5%. Rarely, but sometimes the student and the cosigner passed credit evaluation and were given or assessed a 3% origination fee. What we have now is kind of a tiered origination fee structure. Those in the high range, the 711 plus, don't have an origination fee, 0%. In the middle range of the credit score criteria, 651 to 710, they'd be assigned or assessed a 3% origination fee. And then those in the lower third, the minimum, would get the 5%. And what we've seen is basically a complete flop from what we were accustomed to seeing before. We were accustomed to seeing about 80 to 90% of all Cal loans approved at 5% origination fees. We're seeing about 80 to 90% approved now at 0% origination fees. Again, it helps the kiddos get more money. Okay? And by all means, any questions, please jump on in. All right, be on time.
Albert, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you all considered going back to, say, a recent year, like last year's borrowers who were not eligible based on credit or were denied based on credit, and letting them know about the new structure?
Well, unfortunately, at the time the board and senior management made the approval, it was basically from that point forward.
Right. I'm just saying, like you send out a notice for students who borrowed last year, is sending a notice to students who were not able to because of credit and just letting them know that that's different and that's changed.
We didn't necessarily publish anything. We included it and updated in our informational high-level fact sheet online.
Oh, it wasn't in that email to the students?
The one that invited them to go back, and no, it did not.
Okay.
It did not, because that was to prior recipients anyway, so they would have passed and gotten some version of it before.
Did it tell them about the new origination fee structure?
It was strictly an invitation to go by and bug you guys. So for Be On Time, of course, we all know it's a 0% interest rate loan if it becomes a loan. It does have the forgiveness provisions that Michelle will cover in a little bit. So if those goals are met, then there's no liability, no need to repay. Even if it does need to be repaid, it does have a 6-month grace period, and it does have a minimum payment of $75 a month or 15 years to repay it. What's a student have to do? They have to complete a FAFSA. The requirement is that they be eligible for federal aid, have to be enrolled full-time, be a Texas resident, graduated in or after 2002-2003 high school academic year, and that seems like a silly thing, but students who graduated from high school prior to that weren't eligible because Be On Time wasn't around when they graduated. So it's for those who graduated after that time frame. Same goes for associate's degrees, May of 2005. Renewal eligibility, well, at the end of the first academic year that they receive BOT, they have to be meeting SAP. At the end of the second and subsequent years of BOT, then they have to meet the 75% completion rate, and they have to have a 2.5 on a 4-scale GPA. A student can't get BOT for more than 150 hours, and I know that sometimes is a little confusing. We have questions come in sometimes about the 150-hour rule. A student can have 150 hours and still get Be On Time. That's a lot of hours, and probably they're not going to get forgiven. But the key here is that BOT, basically, in my simplistic terms, you can't receive BOT to pay for more than 150 hours. So the distinction is not in how many attempted hours, it's how many hours BOT was used or granted or awarded and received for. Exceptions. There are some exceptions to the full-time requirement for Be On Time. Hardship for illness, care of a sick person, or fewer than 9 hours required to complete your degree. Those are some, and if you have others, by all means, just give us a yell and we'll try and help you figure those out. If it is for less than full-time, then the award has to be prorated. Obviously, 12 or more hours, you get 100% of the annual amount that year. 9 to 11, 75%. 6 to 8 hours, 50%. And obviously below 6 hours, because it is a 6-hour requirement minimum, even under the hardship provisions. This year, the awards are $8,000 a year, $4,000 per semester. The 2-year schools, $2,700 a year. And there is a 3% fixed, no variations in that, 3% origination fee for the Beyond Time. Some of the things that happened at the Capitol a year ago, and I guess, boy, we're not too far away from them coming around first of the year again. But for the private institutions, some of the changes were that the private institutions, by what's called negotiated rulemaking, decide how some things were going to work. And when we say negotiated rulemaking, basically what that means is there was a committee formed, a cross-section of representatives of the private institutions came together. They sat down and they decided how funds were going to be allocated, depending on how the legislature, the amounts of legislature provided for Beyond Time. They decided by consensus, by agreement, how those funds would be allocated and what to do with leftover allocations as the fiscal year, the academic year moves forward. During the last legislative session, there was a little focus put on BOT. How successful is it? What are the default rates? What are the forgiveness rates? So legislatively, there are some requirements now for counseling, loan repayment, and default prevention counseling. If an institution's default or forgiveness rates fall above or below the statewide averages. And Michelle will cover that when she comes up in a little bit. But one of the things that was discussed and agreed to was the allocation of funds. How's it going to work? Well, obviously, it's all based upon how much money the coordinating board gets or is appropriated by the legislature during the sessions. And it's going to be calculated based on, I have to take a deep breath to read this one, calculated based on the 3-year average share of Texas residents enrolled full-time in an undergraduate degree program who completed a FAFSA. What's that mean? Basically, as an example, let's say the legislature appropriates for the for the private institutions, $20 million. And if the statewide 3-year average enrollment is 50,000 students at all the private institutions across the state, and if any one institution has a 3-year average of 5,000 students, then that institution would get $200,000 because they have 5,000 of the 50,000 statewide, which is 10%. 10% of 20 million is $200,000. Simple enough? That's simple enough math for me. What to do with leftovers? As is common with the other state financial aid, come February the 20th or the first working day thereafter, any monies that haven't been awarded, or in our case for Beyond Time, where you've gone into the loan system and certified, kind of encumbered and reserved those funds for a student, anything that hasn't been certified or awarded, reserved for a student, you kind of lose title to. And the day after, we'll take those and proceed to basically reallocate. We'll reallocate, and the reallocation method still needs to be defined. It probably will be an email, hey, we need some more money, and we'll take what may have been taken on February the 20th and reallocate. And of course, the goal of the program is to use as much of this money as is possible. So we'll do one reallocation, and if we feel there's a need to reallocate because there's still some money left, then we'll do it again. Again, to try to use as much as of the funds that are made available. Forgiveness. I'll call Michelle up here now. Any other questions before I walk away?
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I understood you to say that when they're determining other federal eligibility, not to include Pell Grant if the student didn't complete a FAFSA. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was just looking, and it says other federal eligibility. So I was just curious about that, why it's just loans and not federal Pell. And you said that's not what was shared last year.
question answered that came out after it also said Pell was one.
I don't understand why Pell wouldn't be, maybe. That's my question.
I went by what's posted on the website, HH Loans, and if you have your system up.
Yeah, I looked at it and it just says other federal eligibility.
But in the summary, I think it says specifically Perkins and Federal Direct Sub and Unsub.
I don't understand. Well, I guess I'm just curious as to, that's odd to me, but that's just me.
Well, and I would just be guessing. I know those are the guidelines set by upper management based on the agreements we have with bondholders and things of that nature. And I believe the intent was, and I can double check, but that they didn't want tax-free bond money, which is what we use to replace federal money, federal loan money. Pell being a grant.
I guess that's what it doesn't specifically say, and what I've looked at is loan money. It just says federal eligibility. That's why.
So Pell being a grant, you would account for that anyway.
No, not if they didn't complete a FAFSA. You wouldn't know their Pell eligibility. Gotcha. So that's why I think it's confusing to me.
Yeah. No, I think the idea behind it was not to use our source of funding for these loans to replace federal loan money.
Interesting. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Michelle Williams, Program Manager over the servicing side. Won't keep you here very long. It's a very brief presentation. But if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. So the few bullet points that we're going to go over is basically the forgiveness, the school authorization form, about confirmation eligibility form, official transcripts, and then the loan repayment and default prevention counseling. So the forgiveness requirements have remained the same. For an undergraduate degree or certificate, the student must have at least a 3.0 GPA. One of two criteria is to have graduated within 4 calendar years of their initial enrollment after high school, 5 calendar years initial enrollment after high school if it's a degree in architecture or engineering, or 2 calendar years at a 2-year public or private institution. And then the second criteria then is to, again with the 3.0 GPA, have no more than 6 credit hours over what's required for their degree plan. So if the degree requires 120 credit hours, they can get up to 126 and still be eligible for forgiveness. That does not include credit by exam, developmental hours, or dual credit hours. The school authorized official form. Every August, we're required now by auditors to have a new form on file of school officials that are authorized to complete the form, the confirmation form. So we typically send out an email notification to all the schools letting them know, hey, it's that time again, and attach a form to that email. Any confirmation form that we receive with an official name not on the list, we do actually, it says reject, but we don't reject it. Basically, we stop the process, contact the school to try to get a new form with that person included, or ask if that person really isn't authorized, ask that they provide us with a new confirmation form completed by someone who is authorized. A lot of times when there's staffing changes, the school may forget to send in a new form, and so sometimes that's really just what it is. So that last one is just reminding to update immediately after staffing changes occur. This is just a copy. The next 3 slides are actually just copies of the confirmation form. The first section is just the part that the borrower completes, I should say the student completes, and sends or takes to the school to be completed. Most of the time it's either by the registrar's office. There are some schools where the financial aid office does the completion. The second part is just the school's area to determine which of the criteria the student meets, or if they don't meet it at all. And then the next part, of course, is the detailed information that we ask for and that we use as guidelines to help us in determining the borrower's eligibility, the student's eligibility. We have done a slight adjustment to the form. At the bottom, it used to have a place for the authorized official and then for the person that's completing the form as well, because a lot of times it's two different people. So we've just changed that now to just have the name and the title of the person that's completing the form and the signature. Both people, well, whomever completes the form has to be on the list. So it didn't make sense to keep having to look for two names when we could just look for one. And then asked for an email address of the authorized official as well. One of the things we were finding is a lot of times we had the phone number always on the form, but if we need to contact someone, that phone number usually just puts us into that loop, and we either end up leaving a voicemail on a generic mailbox, but we don't get a person that we really need to talk to. Of the students, we do request that they provide us with both high school and all college transcripts. The high school transcript we ask for, particularly if there are dual credit hours, because it gives us a starting point of when they actually started their college career. And so I know a lot of schools, we've heard a lot of schools will hold on to everything until they receive it. Well, receive everything from the student and then forward it to us. Whether you do it that way or not, if we don't have everything, we'll still contact the student to let them know once we start the review process if we know something. So you don't have to change your process. However you're doing it is fine. Before I talk about that one, just one more word on the forgiveness. Just like with the loan guides, we do send out blast emails to the students twice a year, reminding them that their beyond time loans are eligible for forgiveness if they meet the criteria. We typically send those out towards the end of April, beginning of May, and then again in December. We have started doing those via email, and the last couple of times that we've sent that out, last year and this year, we've sent out about 15,000 to 16,000 emails.
Once all documentation is in,
usually from May to about September, it's about a month at least.
If you'll repeat the question, since a microphone wasn't used, so the online viewers will hear it.
The question was, once all the documentation is received, what's the turnaround time for review? And again, from May to about September, it's about 30 days at least. In December, for the rest of the year, we're usually able to do that between 15 days or so. Just depends on the volume. Any other questions? Great. So the required loan repayment and default prevention counseling, that is, of course, the result of Senate Bill 215. For default, the 3-year cohort loan default rate has to be greater than the statewide average. Or if it's greater than the statewide average, the school will be required to provide counseling. For forgiveness, if the 3-year cohort forgiveness rate is less than 50% of the statewide, then they will be required to do the counseling. We are working with TG to create those materials, get some modules together. That will be very brief, but hopefully helpful. The counseling modules are expected to be completed by the fall. We'll get those numbers out. Should be out late in the fall. The modules won't have to start being used until the spring. Now that does not include spring disbursements, but the modules should be available for use during this spring. Is there any questions on that? We'll provide more information on that as we get closer to completion of those modules. Any questions? Yes.
Are the rates for the default and forgiveness already available? Are they published or sent to us yet?
No, those should be out sometime after September as well, September,
okay,
October.
So along with the template, we'll also get the rates and find out.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So that is the contact information for myself, for Albert, and then Janie Miramontes is the Director of Client Services. If you have any questions, feel free to either email or give us a call. Thank you.
I do have one more admission to make, and I'm ashamed of you all. You didn't catch me. 10% of the be on time allocation, 10% of 20 million is not 200,000, it's 2 million. And this is what happens when they let the managers prepare the materials instead of our staff. So I apologize. That would have been in the example $2 million and not 200,000.
Okay, any other questions about anything that we've gone over today? Loans or audit or TEG or CBID, anything? If not, I want to thank you for coming today and hope that you received some information that will be helpful to you. And know that we are available, both LPO and GSP are available to help you and assist you in any way that we can. And if you would, before you leave, I put an evaluation form by your places during the lunch hour. So if you will complete that and just leave it on your table, and we'll pick those up. And unless you have any other questions, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for participating and traveling to the coordinating board, and safe travels getting back.